Ladies and gentlemen, which camera am I on? My name is Brendon Lee O'Connell. Today's date is... Where is the date? It is the 3rd of April, 2022. It is Sunday evening, and I have started very late on this little project. I've worked in Iran with government analysts. I've been to Lebanon, and I've been to Malaysia and all sorts of interesting places. I have 3 warrants for my arrest. I had the biggest hate speech trial in history, and you probably never heard of me. Someone suggested you should stay that at the beginning to get people's attention. So I am. Today we're going to talk about the Ukraine. Again, briefly, the electronic sovereign drawing rights distributed ledger technology that they're going to apply to Ukraine, and all the rebuilding programs they're probably going to apply to Ukraine. We're going to ask the question about Vlad's seemingly completely imbecile, ridiculous mass, I don't know what you'd call it, allegedly an invasion of Ukraine and the disaster that it was, and why would he do it? Then we're going to talk about the real main bit, which is also involves Ukraine. Paul Mannafort, Roger Stone, Erik Prince, Psy Group Israel, Unit 8200, Telpia Program, and Nathaniel Rothschild. This is going to be very, very interesting. Stay tuned, but first a word from our most beloved and lovable sponsor, the greatest shoe salesman from the back alleys of the former Russian Empire, BB.
In cyber is a real domain of power. In cyber is a real domain of power.
Now, ladies and gents, before we get on to the interesting aspects of Ukraine back from 2004, when Paul Mannafort besties with Roger Stone and Erik Prince, and I had no idea, right in the center of the Mueller report. Not only is Erik Prince everywhere cooperating with the Trump campaign, and especially Roger Stone. Yes, Roger Stone and Erik Prince had quite a very comfortable relationship, as did Paul Mannafort. And would you believe Nathaniel Rothschild? And it was sitting right there in the Mueller report. I can't believe I missed it. The Mueller report remains an absolutely fascinating document, which we're going to briefly touch back into, given the centerpiece of Ukraine being so important at this time, particularly Manafort's close relationship with Oleg Deripaska, who's of course besties with Vladimir Putin, extremely close. All very good, interesting stuff. But let's briefly get into the Ukraine as it stands now and the current standoff and what's going on. Here's an interesting article. Russia's thrilling dream of new world order with China. The US has been pressing China not to support Russia, but Vladimir Putin has other grander plans, and the signs from Beijing are ominous. I mean, we've been talking about this since, what, early 2018? Come on. Let's watch this little bit here. This is just recently. No limits. No limits will reach for the sky.
作为联合国安理会的常任理事国，中俄始终坚持在不结盟、不对抗、不针对第三国原则基础上发展双边关系。双方
non-alignment, non-confrontation, and not targeting third countries. Wah, wah, wah. That deserves a prize. That's pretty funny. Now, we all want to laugh at America, and rightly so, but why don't we laugh more at Russia and China? I mean, seriously, they're even more absurd. Come on.
将继续践行真正的多边主义，致力于推动世界
True global multipolarity.
多极化和国际关系民主。
I put to you, as I've said before, and as many others have stated in our group, that multipolarity was central to the plan for the introduction of the Fourth Industrial Revolution, blockchain, crypto, the Great Reset. If multipolarity does not go ahead, if the United States stays firmly in Eurasia, and it seems like it will, at least superficially for now, then has Klaus and the gang lost? Has Heinz Kissinger, that, you know, he's not the Messiah, he's a very naughty boy. Have they lost? These are the questions we have to ask. And we can also ask why it is the mainstream media seems so slow. Not entirely. Even the New York Times had articles on good old Alexander Dugin, the son of the Russian GRU general, and his work on multipolarity and the fourth political theory. Way back in 2017. Who introduced me to all of that? It was Nick Spiro back in 2017. So they're not entirely slow. New York Times was also doing large sections from 2017, 2018 on none other than Yuri Bezmenov. All very interesting, including videos. Let's quickly go over a bunch of articles to do with just Ukraine and China and that building that multipolar world order. Again, the central part was linking Germany and Russia, Berlin-Moscow axis, German and French high technology and other high technology out of Europe in exchange for Russian raw materials. Germany as a central point would then rule the world from Eurasia, the Mackinder World Island. Good old China having a backdoor into the completely take out the US electrical grid on March 4th, 2022 from Law Enforcement Today. You should contact Law Enforcement Today. The link will be below. You can write for them, contact them, and I've contacted them and asked, did you know Israel-China technology? Try Googling it and tell me what you find. Let's start contacting people that matter, not some useless who knows who, some idiot online. Just stop wasting your time with all due respect to housewives and mechanics and plumbers and shrimp fishermen. But you're not a hub of fucking power. We've got to start contacting Law Enforcement Today and the FBI and a whole range of very interesting places that you can go. And people have been doing that as we speak. They've got back to me. There's a couple of great ones. There's a great Assyrian Confederation of Europe, Assyrian Global Governance. People are going and posting on places like this. Get out of the usual suspects. Getting back to the back door that could completely take out the US electrical grid. Now imagine if they knew who Zohar Zisapel was, Rad Group, and the complete infiltration of Israeli military intelligence, Russian GRU, SVU assets into the United States. Imagine, my God, it would be incredible. Let's also remember that good old Twitter posting from, when was it again? From February the 9th, 2021, just over a year ago. If the United States does not continue to recognize Israel's sovereignty in the Golan Heights and drastically changes Trump's Iran policy, Israel will have to consider building a stronger relationship with Russia and China. Till now, Israel has always considered American. Okay, this was always the plan, the bunting cloverleaf map. They're getting turned on, so they're getting cranky. Is a trade alliance between Russia and India on? Yes. Well, they're trying to organise it. We'll see. Now that the United States has firmly dug in its heels in Eurasia, the help from Mackinder, the world island, in Ukraine no less. Remember, who controls Eastern Europe controls the heartland. Who controls the heartland controls the world island. Who controls the world island controls the world. So you're going to see these trading blocks forming all the time, and we don't know if it's going so well for them. This was sent to me. Israel sells US weapons secrets to China. This is Edward Brody, but this guy is an Israeli-American activist, and we should be trying to get in touch with Jews who are fighting hard on this cause. Whether you consider them leftist, conservative, it's not your political cup of tea. Who gives a crap? This guy's talking about it. Maybe if Jeremy Rothschild hadn't decided to hang with Greg McCarran, who likes to hang with Adam Green, who likes to hang with white supremacists, things could have been very different. Again, the link is below. These people are highly qualified activists who are doing some very good material. Thank you to the people that sent. Look at this from good old Chatham House, the Royal Institute of International Affairs, the EU and Ukraine. Time for bold solidarity. Let's quickly talk about this, with Ukraine now signalling it will drop its NATO ambitions in an attempt at peace. This is profound. Its EU membership has never looked more vital. No NATO, but EU membership and an EU quick reaction force. Well, this is really interesting, isn't it? Good old Chatham House, based in London. It's like some international crime syndicate which holds no loyalty to any country or any particular group except itself. How interesting. This is from Katarina Wolkutz, Associate Fellow, Russia and Eurasia Program. As the war still rages and despite significant moves to support Ukraine militarily, the weaknesses of the European Union have been once again exposed. Remember what they said. They said in Zbig Brzezinski, the grand chessboards we discussed in video 117, Brzezinski says in the Grand Chessboard, we want a strong Europe, but not too strong, because we want NATO to stay there and to America to maintain its geostrategic primacy on the Grand Chessboard. At a time when Ukraine now looks likely to drop any future applications to join NATO in an attempt to attain a ceasefire and a withdrawal of Russian troops, EU member states are still divided over Ukraine's application, leaving the EU as a whole unable to respond. Granting full EU membership could take decades to accomplish in practice and is largely symbolic, but acknowledging it would send a powerful message of solidarity. In contrast, denying it gives the perception that Ukraine is being in effect abandoned by its European family. Not at all. They're going to step in with that electronic sovereign drawing rights, distributed ledger technology stuff, and they're going to rebuild the Ukraine under a smart cities program. So I asked the question, did Vladimir Putin just go there to smash the living shit out of the place? Because how on earth he thought he was just going to wander in there, it seems bizarre. Now, Russia's not the United States, but they're not entirely stupid. It was almost like someone said, come on in the first place, and suck it. I don't know. It's very difficult, but there's lots of interesting stuff we could go into, particularly that article. That's worthy one all its own. But I have this interesting, just very briefly, thing to show you on sovereign drawing rights, distributed ledger technology, which is, the key. I don't have to tell you. You're all into Julian Romano, Cindy Niles, Alison McDowell. You know what's coming in the fourth industrial revolution, but I found this very interesting, sent to me by the magical unicorn. This is this interbank network. It's a large PDF. I'll leave a link to it. Overledger, that's distributed ledger technology interoperably API, which is an app, basically. Dr. Luke Riley, Head of Innovation. Peter Marisans, Chief Technology Officer. Martin Hargraves, Chief Product Officer. 20-plus years cybersecurity. Gilbert Verdian, CEO and founder. Knows doubt GCHQ, boys, one and all. Federal Reserve, working in 5 government committees. Federal Reserve, EU Blockchain Observatory, EU, UK Parliament, and Distributed Ledger Technology Committee. Remember when all those horseshit people told you Bitcoin's going to go to $1 billion? And Bitcoin may remain valuable. As I've said repeatedly, Magical Unicorn said to me, it looks likely that silver, gold, and Bitcoin would form some sort of airy-fairy backing to the central bank digital currencies, to give you a sense of. But the long-term future is there's not going to be any backing of anything. It will be a just-in-time economy, and you'll just get what you're given like a child. You'll get playtime, you'll get computer time, you'll get to go out and play in the park time, and you'll get what you're given in the food-wise time because you don't know what you want. You want to be a child? They're going to treat you like a child. But this bit is the bit I do like. This makes me wonder about Ukraine. Interbank network. Quant are implementing tokenized money during 2021-2022 for 12 countries with their LAC chain alliance targeting emergency payments to vulnerable populations. They're pretty vulnerable in the Ukraine at the moment. In Latin America and the Caribbean by the Inter-American Development Bank. So this is the IMF, all new, coming out of the Bank of International Settlements. Latin American dollar, tokenized money, tokenized fiat currency that is technically restricted such that it can only be spent on specific goods and services. This is the universal basic income. Wholesale to realer, multi-distributed ledger technology, CBDC, welfare and emergency payments can deliver targeted benefits by funding specific types of payments, e.g. housing, utilities and groceries, and they'll be needing that in the Ukraine. Reduced incentive for fraud, purposeful money cannot be spent on anything else, and rightly so. You know what those Ukrainians and Russians are like, always stealing all the money, but if they get this CBDCs, it'll only go to the people that matter. Displaces volatile tokens. That's your Ethereum and everything else, everyone. I'm going to be a billionaire. I don't think so. In closed loop and Internet of Things use cases, ensuring stability of value and reducing systematic adoption of, quote, private money. But I'm going to be a billionaire and the bankers won't be able to control me. Yay! Retain control with only authorised FIs able to convert between regular CBDC digital dollar and purposeful CBDC digital dollar. How interesting. Back to the Chatham House article. They're the sorts of people that will be integrating this distributed ledger technology, but it's not going to be Bitcoin or Ethereum. It'll be central bank digital country controlled by the same people who invented it. I'm going to be a trillionaire. You'll get what you're given, you little bitch. You're not going to control anything. You're going to do exactly what you're told. It will be austerity forever in a UN smart city gulag. But now we have a highly vulnerable population in the Ukraine, don't we? Was that Vlad's job, just to go there and smash the shit out of the place? Seriously. European integration was, he's a young global leader. He's been doing, how can he fight Klaus and the World Economic Forum when he's done nothing but cooperate with them on everything, including COVID? But it does. All I have to do is say, if I was, I've got abs of steel, ripped to the bone, a 250-pound ripped body, and you just believe me. It won't matter how I present to you with my shirt off. You just believe me. Vlad just keeps saying what an independent operator he is, and everything he does every single day, he cooperates with the World Economic Forum and the International Banking Cartel. He was put there by Kissinger, and it's getting ridiculous, the garbage coming out. But people seem to just suck it up. European integration was created with one goal in mind, to end warfare on the European continent. No, it's to gain control and integrate the Fourth Industrial Revolution. So successful was the EU in this regard that it came to regard itself as a post-geopolitical entity. So you see, now we have nuclear weapons, biological weapons, cyber warfare. It's so dangerous, everyone. And as we move into the Fourth Industrial Revolution, which will give us all beautiful driverless cars and clean air and all the rest of that good stuff, and the polar bear farts won't affect us, and we won't die from oceans rising, and Greta will be happy. As they do all these wonderful things and end warfare and nuclear war and tactical nukes and Chernobyls and God knows the alien space monkeys, we just need, and of course AI and machine learning, all these horrible things, we need a centralised command and control government with powers of enforcement to stop all these horrible things happening to us. It's an oldie but a goodie, and it's the shit problem reaction solution and the dialectic that never ceases giving. But Russia's war against Ukraine has caught the EU completely unprepared. Oh, yeah, of course. They just planned decades ahead. But anyway, firstly, until now, Russia has been accorded respect as a business partner. Secondly, Ukraine was treated, albeit benignly, as something of an irritation, and for some member states, a hindrance to their Russia First policy. The war means that both of these perceptions have been turned on their head. I think this is an absolutely pivotal article. Russia has become a global business pariah, while Ukraine has the potential to become the cornerstone in the European project. How interesting. The link to that article is below. I suggest you check it out thoroughly. Let's quickly go back to this article I put up previously, which says a lot, the Washington Post. This is from March 5th, 2014. And thank you to the people who've donated my bank. Stephen, George, you know who you are. Someone sent $100 in Bitcoin. Thank you. I do love it. God bless Bitcoin. It's so much fun. I pay for so many things on that, all my online stuff. And Patreon supporters, of course, and we're having really good things happening. We'll get that flyer for you very soon, within the next few weeks, and a whole range of offline materials. But thank you to the people who are sending me such quality links. I'm a bit overwhelmed, particularly Julianne and others, but we're going to get into a rhythm eventually. I've had a few problems I don't want to go into yet. When I'm completed doing my private life, I'll let you know, and then I'll tell you what's been going on once it's all finished, because I'd hate to die in a certain place. It's a long story. I'll let you know all about it. But Henry Kissinger to settle the Ukraine crisis start at the end. So let's, March 5th, 2014, I've mentioned this before, but let's quickly go back to it. Just to remind us, with all you have, Chatham House just mentioning Ukraine, European Union, linking Germany and Russia, German high-tech, French high-tech, all the high-tech out of Europe, some which is incredible high-tech, but it's all American intellectual property. That's what you don't realize. With, of course, Russian raw resources. So what these are trying to convince the middle managers, the managerial class, particularly in the United States, that's why Israel, Russia and China released COVID, to bring down the US dollar and get the US back in its box, and it will develop North America, South America in the multipolar world order. So I put you, if there is no multipolar world order and the United States remains strong, and the United States dollar is linked to the petrodollar and they remain the primary currency, and the United States keeps its physical presence, its weapons and its troops right there in Europe, right there in Ukraine, they may well actually sit in Ukraine and say thank you, put bases in. If they do that, it's over. Well, this form of it is over. I don't know exactly what comes after. But I put to you the multipolar world order was an absolute integral establishment of the Fourth Industrial Revolution, blockchain and all the rest. It's not that I believe blockchains are going to suddenly stop in central bank digital currencies, but what I say is the form that Klaus and the gang in the City of London, the Internationalist Trading Guild, the Internationalist Trotskyites, it's over. Their version. We're not sure if it's good or bad yet. One organised crime group's taken over from another. I'll take the United States WASPy organised crime group, thank you, just for now. But we'll see. Let's just read this article again. The Ukrainians are the decisive element. This is Henry Kissinger talking in 2014. The wise man, he should know what's going on. He put Vlad in. They live in a country with a complex history and a polyglot composition, blah, blah, blah. But let's go down here to the last bit. To treat Ukraine as part of an East-West confrontation would scuttle for decades any prospect to bring Russia and the West, especially Russia and Europe, into a cooperative international system. Boom. I think we need
Amen. Amen.
What do you think? Into a cooperative international system, especially Russia and Europe. I think that just got scuttled. Anyway, that's enough of that. So just remember that article, please. That Chatham House previous article. It's all linked below. If the multipolar world order is scuttled and the United States remains the strong unipolar power, does that mean the fourth industrial revolution, as Klaus and the gang imagined it, is it over? Only time will tell. Let it reveal itself. Before going on to these next group of articles, before we get on to Erik Prince and Steve Bannon and Roger Stone and Paul Mannafort and 3EDC and Jim Jones, Denology and all that stuff, these are all the people surrounding Trump. I want you to remember that nobody does a damn effing thing if the banking cartels are against you. So don't tell me anyone is operating independently. The only country that can truly operate independently is the United States. So we better hope there's some changes taking place, and I believe there are some positive signs. Getting into this, which is quite correct. Western intel is a force multiplier for Ukraine. Russia's weakness is a surprise. The Ukrainians have used US and NATO intel quickly and efficiently, inflicting heavy losses with missiles supplied by the West. Russia, meanwhile, is having difficulty coordinating its forces, forcing it to hit static targets. The two sides will soon face three options. I put to you that the Russian forces must have known the West was going to intercede, or they had been promised by someone that it was fine and they could take it, like, I don't know, Saddam Hussein was promised, yeah, go in, we have no interest in Kuwait, go on in, knock yourself out. I don't know. Or they agreed, and Putin's just come in to bust the place up. In will come this new distributed ledger technology system, the UBI, to stop all the corrupt, the Zelensky scumbags of this world stealing all the money. They'll be able to bring this ledger system in, begin rebuilding, lay down the fiber optic, the 5G systems, and within a few years you see this magical new Ukraine, an absolute gem of an example of a country that has been brought back from the brink by the beautiful, wonderful electronic sovereign drawing rights, distributed ledger technology and central bank digital currencies, preventing all the corruption, taking away badly needed food and supplies from the poor people of Ukraine. And now they've got a beautiful new city. And it's freaking great. And everyone goes, yeah, well, that's pretty good. What do you think? I think there's a good chance of that. AI could replace human military commanders in making life or death. It's everywhere now. All the new American Russian systems are coming out with remote control ability. The new infantry fighting vehicle to replace the Bradley infantry fighting vehicle will have, it'll be a normal vehicle, and it will also have a remote control 10-kilometre range, so no humans inside it. That's all becoming standard now. It's becoming standard in aircraft. This is building robots and drones to take us into the new phase with AI. We need to really focus on this stuff and ask ourselves how this is going to go. Because if they just have some sort of static standoff, then we've been done over. There has to be immediate talk on what the hell we're going to do with this new technology. And of course, they probably will. And you know what? AI, machine learning, and automated killing machines are very dangerous. So we need a centralized command and control, one world government to control this problem, not to mention the biological warfare and the nuclear weapons and the Chernobyls and the whatever else they've got on, and global warming. They seem to win all the time, because every time something comes up, we need a discussion on this dangerous new technology, up pops, we're the UN. We were funded by Rockefeller and Rothschild and the City of London, and we'd like to have a centralised. No, I want a centralised America to just run the whole damn show. Fuck the UN. It's nothing but a talk fest, and that's good. I'm not against the UN as a place for people to talk. I think that's a good idea. I only want one country with powers of enforcement, one with a transparent government, with a constitution that they actually apply. That would be the miracle. It's all we've got, so let's aim for it. Don't be a cynic or belligerent. Just get yourself offline, put a bullet in your head and bury yourself in your bunker and get lost. If you want to stay online, be productive, be positive, and start working forward. We'll lead by example. Israel, look, I don't want to go on anymore. The chips, all the rest, all this stuff's coming up. Of course there's a chip shortage. You know why? Because there's going to be massive rebuilding programs coming up, and they've got to build the smart cities and the Internet of Things. So yes, they're building up production supply. I'm not so sure about this war. We're going to have to watch closely whether they just contain. You've got to understand, China is not operating on its own. It can't do crap without US technology. And all the US has to do is take away the technology, and that is the end of the Chinese Communist Party. Simple. So we're going to have to come to some rough decisions that, yes, there is a strong stench of highly organised. I remember Colonel Fletcher Prouty, who was the liaison between the Air Force and the CIA. He was very big in the day, back in the late 90s, early 2000s. He had his website, fletcherprouty.org, and he was portrayed by Donald Sutherland, X, in the JFK Oliver Stone movie. And he was the liaison between the Air Force and the CIA. He provided equipment and weapons and Air Force stuff. And he said he was in banking and oil in the early 70s, and they said then they would introduce credit cards and wind down the Soviet Union in the early 80s, and that's exactly what they did. They planned decades ahead. Now the magical unicorn will say, yes, it's all planned into the nth detail. I'm not so quite sure about that, but that should always be your default position. They always seem to win. They seem to have 5 different tracks. If that one doesn't work, they go down the next one, but they always get what they want, one way or the other. All we can do is educate. So we're going to be doing that with Julianne and others, and Tammy and Cindy Niles and Alison McDowell. Not that I talk to her, but I mean, Alison McDowell has so much information. It's like, it's really an academic's resource. Somehow I've got to get that plethora of information, cat lady information. It's all over the freaking place, but it's rich. There's gold in there. Got to get that gold, that wholesale information, and turn it into something retail. And we hope to do that soon. And we hope we can embarrass the rest of the internet, who's just been begging you for money with no solutions, no call to political action, demanding $200,000 for their new studio and whatnot. We've got to stop this and start getting busy in the political world. Start forming local groups, particularly school boards, as they introduce the new VR metaverse experience that they're bringing in. They're going to do it to school kids. So really taking over school boards, and I'll give Steve Bannon credit for that. They've been doing extensive work taking over school boards and whatnot. Maybe they could get Erik Prince's sister, Bestie DeVos, to assist with that. All right. It's all very, very interesting, isn't it? Erik Prince and Co. And we'll get to them very soon. I think we're going to end it right there on this section. Now we're going to turn to Erik Prince. Speaking of school boards, and getting control of school boards is vital, because that's where they're going to get the kids. That's where they're going to get them on the VR goggles. You got to get in that school and take them over 100%. We'll talk more about that another day. Let's get back to Erik Prince, Paul Mannafort, Ukraine, Oleg Deripaska, and Nathaniel Rothschild. Okay, Blackwater founder Erik Prince cites East India Trading Company model as a model to privatise the Afghanistan war. I remember him being interviewed by Steve Bannon. Now, there is extensive contacts, of course, between Steve Bannon, Erik Prince, Roger Stone, and others. Roger Stone was deep in with Erik Prince. Who else was there? Paul Mannafort. Who was Paul Mannafort in bed with? Good old General Jim Jones of Denology. Shadowgate. Think about that. Wow. It's one big pile. And who else was there? None other than Nathaniel Rothschild. And before we go on, let's watch an interesting tip. I completely forgot about this video. Thank you again to all those wonderful people. You've been sending me such good links, and you've really laid it out for me in nice format. So it's so easy. Not people who send stuff like, hey, you should watch this. It's no, I don't do mystery clicks. You tell me if it's such important information, right? You will put, hey, Brendon, this is an interesting article, or this is an interesting video on such and such. Do not send me mystery clicks. I'll just spam you. I've already got a good group of people. If you want to be one of them, take the time to lay it out for me. I have freaking 100 emails in the morning to go through every morning, and I'll always try to reply. So do me the decency. But let's talk about Margaret Thatcher refusing to let one particular Rothschild off the hook when he was named as part of the Cambridge Five, who were some of the worst Soviet agents ever, deep in the heart of British intelligence. And Margaret Thatcher, to her credit, refused to put him off the hook. Yeah, you've got to love the BBC.
The 6 o'clock news from the BBC.
Yeah.
With Sue Lawley
Is
and
there
Viv
any better? Jolly.
Good evening. The headlines at 6 o'clock. Mrs. Thatcher has declined for the moment to clear the name of Lord
There's a Catholic nun if ever I've seen one. There he is, Lionel Rothschild. I'm not a spy. Speaking of spies. So when we get into Nathaniel, you're going to make the links. Remember Armand Hammer, Bill Browder, all these private people just running backwards and forwards to the Soviet Union and the Chinese Communist Party. Remember Sidney Rittenberg? We'll go into him again briefly. American military intelligence linguist, right-hand man to Chairman Mao, forms Rittenberg and Associates, hangs with Kissinger and Associates, dies peacefully in his bed in California, a multi-millionaire. Something's just not quite right here. Who are all this? Who is this private network, Captain America? The Hydra. Who is this private network? It's not the CIA, it's not the Mossad, it's not even the KGB. This is a privatised banking cartel network. Isn't it, Erik Prince? Isn't it, Betsy DeVos? Get those kiddies. Let's watch this interesting bit. God, I can't believe I forgot this. This is vital. Thank you to the people that reminded me.
Rothschild to say that he was not a Soviet spy, the so-called fifth man. 5 times in the House of Commons this afternoon, the Prime Minister was pressed to clear Lord Rothschild's name and state that the former head of the government's think tank was not a Soviet agent.
Think tank. All those think tanks. Like I said, that lady is a Catholic nun in waiting. You can just imagine that ruler being wrapped across your knuckles, you poor fellow Catholics. During this great Lent, I've had many traumatic memories. Pluto trine, moon, return.
5 times Mrs Thatcher declined to do so. 5 times she replied to opposition and Tory MPs alike that the matter was being considered in government, but she had nothing further to add at this stage. She may
well have taken away the milk from school kids and other really nice activities, ran over a bunch of union workers with horses and lots of great things she did in Northern Ireland. But here's actually something we can actually give her an applause for. Good on you, Maggie.
The pressure came as a result of a letter from Lord Rothschild published in the Daily Telegraph this morning, in which he appeals for a public statement that he is not and never has been a Soviet agent.
Well, that's good enough for me. Will Heinz Kissinger be doing one? Serious question. I've never been a Soviet agent. Come on now.
Roy Hattersley, the Deputy Labour leader, called the Prime Minister's response extraordinary and preposterous. He demanded Lord Rothschild's name be cleared.
That's Labour, that's like the Democrats. The Democrats seem awfully the equivalent of the Democrats, the Tories there in Labour, in England seem desperate to clear the multi-billionaire for some reason. I wonder why that is. George Soros and friends.
Thatcher repeated her answer.
Go, Maggie. Go, Maggie.
Mr. Speaker, Lord Rothschild's letter was published this morning. I have seen it. The letter is being considered in government, as it should be, and I cannot add anything further at this stage. I should have thought that the right honourable gentleman would have understood that.
Well, that satisfied neither Labour nor Tory MPs. An extraordinary answer, stormed Labour's Deputy Leader Roy Hattersley. The Prime Minister should make it clear that Lord Rothschild wasn't and never had been a Soviet agent. The Prime Minister again read out her prepared answer to the growing fury of MPs.
Putting aside the personal anguish which your answer is bound to cause. Lord Rothschild...
It's good to see that the Labour, the party of the working class, the party of the coal miners, the coal miners walking down shopping bare feet and broken glass. It's good to see the Labour, for the working class, defending a poor, vulnerable, multi-billionaire banking cartel operator. The poor wretch. Oliver Twist. Rothschild, please, sir, may I have some more? I'm just a humble billionaire banker. Can I have my beloved... Sorry, mate. Ladies and gentlemen, you're not seeing the rather interesting here. The Labour, this is for the working class. People are desperate to preserve the rights and reputation of a billionaire banker. God bless them. God bless them one and all.
Lord Rothschild was the head of the Central Policy Review staff, working in Downing Street for the...
Part of a privatised network, think tank.
Right Honourable Gentleman, the member for Bexley-Sidcup, when he was Prime Minister. Is the Prime Minister really not prepared to say here and now that Lord Rothschild was not a spy?
Yes, how dare you.
Right Honourable
Beasts.
Gentleman.
Go on, Maggie.
Causing
Go on, Maggie.
Lord Rothschild. Order. The letter was published this morning. I have seen it. The letter is being considered in government, and I cannot add anything further at this stage.
Mr. Hattersley, in considering, even now, answering this question, will the Right Honourable Lady consider not simply the obligations of generous impulses which she does not possess, but the damage that her answers are doing to the British Security Service?
Well, it's Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy times 1,000.
It is preposterous to continue to give the impression that we are infiltrated with moles.
Never. Never. Where would John le Carre get all his fodder for his books and movies, for God's sake? Think about it. We're infected with moles. Yes, you are. We just need to now link Russia and Israel and understand that's been going on for 50, well, longer, well, way longer, since 1917. In fact, earlier, Theodore Herzl. This is gold stuff. Gold for Australia.
Although prominent in public life, Lord Roth...
Look at him, the poor waif, down to his last billion. Labor's going to look after you, buddy. Don't worry.
Rothschild guards his privacy. A reticent man, for many years involved with highly confidential work at the centre of government. He's had close contact with influential figures, not least in the security services.
Heinz Kissinger and others.
Anthony Blunt, a close friend whose treachery he found hard to come to terms with.
How could you have believed in this person and admired him when all the time it was a double life?
Well, what's the answer to that question?
What is the matter with you? How is it you didn't notice it? Why? There is no answer.
There is no answer. Oh, I think there's an answer. What do you think, ladies and gentlemen? Do you think there's an answer? Do you think the East India Trading Company, a privatised network? This is not GCHQ, it's not British MI6, MI5, it's not the FBI, it's not the CIA, it's not DOD, it's not DIA, Department. It's a privatised network. It's not even the KGB, it's not even the Mossad. It's a privatised internationalist network. Global crime network. And there's only a small amount of them, and they're panicking. They're getting really panicky. And you know Israel, Russia and China. Generically, not literally Israel, Russia and China, but those networks within there, they made that freaking virus under contract to bring down the United States economy and Trump. Trump may be a fucking compromised sexual deviant, but he's out compromised sexual deviant. Can we get Heinz Kissinger out the way? When's the sixth man, Heinz Kissinger, going down? That's what I'd like to know. Erik Prince. They're all Kissinger. Steve Pieczenik hanging with Alex Jones. They're all friends. Alex Jones has Blackwater security protecting him. He's been with Erik Prince on his ranch. He's hung there with the Boeing engineers who made the F-18, drinking beers and shooting guns with the pretty ladies. And you know Jones is always going on about what a red-blooded male he is. Well, he has to doth protest too much because I assure you, Alex Jones has some rather insalubrious activities, including clown suits and perhaps small children. Who can say? But he's certainly got to make a big thing of what a red-blooded male he is because I guess, maybe he's quite not. They're called bears, butch gays. And I'd say Alex Jones may well be one of them. Who can say? But there's Erik Prince, cites East India Trading Company in the privatised Afghanistan war. Erik Prince's dark plan for Afghanistan military occupation for profit, not security. Now, let us read this. This is a great little article. Oh, this is gold stuff. Gold for Australia. Prince proposed nothing less than the revival of the British East India Company model of for-profit. Now, I want you to listen very closely. It's what we talk about in video 39. It's the privatisation of everything. Government, the military, the mayors, the schools, everything into the UN Habitat Smart Cities program. Communitarian law is the foundation. It's all comes together in this little article. Prince proposed nothing less than the revival of the British East India Company model of for-profit military occupation, wherein an armed corporation effectively governed most of India for the extraction resources. Prince explained to Carlson, that's Tucker Carlson, how the almost 16-year-old war, remember, Tucker Carlson, Rupert Murdoch, who? Heinz Kissinger. This is the link, the ring that binds them all. Pieczenik, Alex Jones, Erik Prince, Paul Mannafort, General Jim Jones, Denology, Roger Stone, the whole stinking lot of it, Psy Group, you name it. We fought the last 15 years with the 1st Infantry Division model, he says, quote, now we should fight with an East India Company model and do it much cheaper. So you replace a military occupation with the American South Asia Company or something like that, asked Carlson. That's Tucker Carlson asking the question. Yeah, something like that, sure, Prince replies. If you look back in history, the way the English operated India for 250 years, they had an army that was largely run by companies and no English soldiers. So cheap, very low cost. It was also very low cost to the English because the British East India Company funded itself by extracting wealth from the territories it occupied. And therein we have to get into the Sassoons and the Cardoris, the Rothschilds of the East, as we've mentioned before. Watch my video, The Jewish Elites in China. Watch that video. It will be linked below, and it'll be linked at the end of the video. You will see it all come together in this article. It was not the British government. I want you to listen closely. That's why I keep saying it's not the governments. It's a privatised hydra, a parasite that is operating throughout the world. They have infiltrated everything. The Vatican, the banking systems. I'm talking about the old school, very basic banking systems. The lodges even. They've infiltrated everywhere. Quote, "It was not the British government that seized India at the end of the 18th century," writes the author of, quote, "The Anarchy, How a Corporation Replaced the Mughal Empire" by William Dalrymple, "but a dangerously unregulated private company headquartered in one small office 5 windows wide in London and managed in India by an unstable sociopath." Prince knows this. The British East India Company was not simply a mercenary army. Like his Blackwater, but an armed corporation that colonised like a state power. It was not merely a government contractor like Blackwater, but an autonomous military and administrative entity sharing the worst aspects of both the corporation and the imperial state. So Prince's first innovation is to do away with civilian military control administered by the Department of Defence and overseen by civilian elected leadership, as is currently in place, and replace that apparatus with an armed corporation. Privatised military, privatised intelligence, privatised data analytics, privatised. Why do you think Snowden and Assange, America bad, America bad, America bad? Keep America strong, ladies and gentlemen. The second innovation is to denationalise the armed force projecting the corporation's power. Think about this. The second innovation is to denationalise the armed force projecting the corporation's power. Americans are expensive. Blackwater personnel regularly received 6-figure salaries for work in Iraq. Prince envisions a sweatshopization of the mercenary force. Watch out, America. You might end up with it actually within your borders if they break you up. Relying on the cheap labour available in the ravaged domestic labour market of war-torn Afghanistan. How about relying on the cheap labour available in the ravaged domestic labour market of war-torn Ukraine, armed with also the distributed ledger technology system and the universal basic income? Loyalty is not cheap, of course, but Prince is imagining a project of colossal capitalisation, likely far bigger than his Blackwater endeavour. The per-day base pay for Blackwater personnel in Iraq was somewhere in the neighbourhood of $600, nearly 50% higher than the annual per capita income for Afghans. An Afghan might make more in a very short time fighting for Prince's corporation than his countrymen make in a year. And of course, what the plan was to exchange the resources of Afghanistan for this military model. But that deluge of Blackwater money enabling such outsized salaries came from Pentagon and State Department contracts during the mercenary firm days in Iraq. Where would revenue come from for what Prince now proposes? Resource extraction. Just as the East India Company operated on the subcontinent for British stockholders, this is the third innovation. Prince offers. What was that all about private mercs heading into Ukraine as we speak? There's $1 trillion in the ground, of value in the ground, mining, minerals, and another $1 trillion in oil and gas, Prince says of Afghanistan. This will provide the revenue stream to replace government contracts. Prince's firm will be self-funded, self-reliant, and thus autonomous to a degree more similar to a nation-state than a military contractor like Blackwater serving under the Defence Department. Erik Prince is a traitor to the United States, and he's been working with the Chinese Communist Party too. The corporate rulers, Prince suggests, would even recognise objectives away from the original mission, destroy the safe harbour for Al-Qaeda and other terror groups, and towards the prerogatives of profit. This is fourth industrial revolution stuff. Julian Romanello goes right into this philanthropy thing they're talking about here. Prince critiques US strategic aims in Afghanistan to Castle. Even the whole approach of placing bases, US bases was all done to control land and territory, but not the arteries that make money. No, the United States is not allowed to win because you are infected with the Kissinger-type people who are making stupid decisions. Bill Binney said in that great documentary, A Good American, in Vietnam, they knew what was going on and the commanders were so totally incompetent and no one would sack them. You've got the same freaking problem now because they all are highly compromised by Israeli intelligence, doing whatever to 14-year-old schoolgirls and schoolboys and God knows what else in Marseille, France, with the Israelis watching on with their cameras. That's why you can't win a war. Prince's plan to fund occupations by pillage would otherwise be simply an insane notion, howled from the wilderness of policy thought, were it not for Prince's proximity to the president and Trump's repeated assertion that the US should have taken Iraq's oil to recoup costs. Indeed, in his first speech, the Americans' goal is to just smash shit up and the European Union steps in being very nice, and with Israel will come in now. No, those Americans are just, no. You understand? Why can't America ever win? They can never win. Ever. Never. Now they're in Ukraine. Let's see what happens. Erik Prince prefers private spy network to Trump administration. We'll get into Prince and the Mueller report. And I want you to consider the Mueller report. Of all the things they could have gone after, and they never went for the throat, did they? No one ever went for the throat. Nobody went for the throat. Right-wing group targets New York Times reporters who have aggressively reported on. Now, this is Project Veritas, who's a good friend of Erik Prince. James O'Keefe. What did I tell you? James O'Keefe, Roger Stone, Paul Mannafort, 3EDC, LLC, General Jim Jones. The link is below. All about James O'Keefe. I've got no love of the New York Times, I'll assure you. But I'm just saying, can you see how this thing operates? And they're all linked in with Israel, Psy Group, and other stuff. We'll get into it in a bit. Erik Prince recruits ex-spies to help infiltrate liberal groups. And it goes into, again, James O'Keefe, Erik Prince. Former Russian spy Anthony Blunt interview. That's best friends with Lord Rothschild. Mueller report. Dugin met with Steve Bannon in Rome in 2018. That's Alexander Dugin, son of a GRU officer, the multipolar world order. Bannon claimed that the meeting in 2018 was their first interaction and that the 2016 US election was not discussed. Of course it wasn't. You know who else was in the area at the same time? Adam Green. Interesting. Rothschild. Let's get this down. Michael Caputo, a former employee of a firm run by Mannafort and several others, including Roger Stone, told the committee that in 2004, Mannafort hired him on a Deripaska-related project. In particular, Caputo told the committee that he was retained to organise US media coverage that would be positive towards Deripaska in response to Deripaska's failed efforts to obtain a US visa. Although Deripaska, a good friend of Vladimir Putin. Mannafort recalled that he met Deripaska through his business partner at the time, Rick Davis. Davis had met Deripaska in 2003 through Nathaniel Rothschild, a British investments fund manager and spy for the Soviet Union and Israel. A British investment fund manager and scion of the Rothschild banking dynasty. According to open source information, Rothschild and Deripaska have had relationships since at least 2003. Press reports further suggest that the relationship between the two men helped Deripaska secure the financing needed to cement his control of UC Ruskal in the early to mid-2000s. Manafort's influence operations in Ukraine. Interesting. None other than the Nathaniel Rothschild. Just like his granddad. I am not a spy. No. Let's get up good old Roger Stone. This is page 233. During the same time period, Stone and Mannafort spoke by phone approximately 64 times, and Stone also spoke 67 times with Trump donor Erik Prince. How interesting. Stone also emailed Erik Prince on October 3rd telling him, quote, spoke to my friend in London last night, the payload is still coming, end quote, which was WikiLeaks stuff, which of course was coming out of Israel and Russia. On October 4, Prince also asked Stone whether Assange had chickened out. Stone responded that he was not sure but checking. Later that day, Prince texted Stone again to ask whether they had heard any more from London. Stone wrote, yes, want to talk on a secure line. Got WhatsApp? Oh yeah, WhatsApp is so secure. I mean, you go to Iran, when I was in Iran, late 2016, early 2017, you could use WhatsApp, you couldn't use Signal. You weren't allowed to have Signal there. Stone wrote, yes, want to talk on a secure line, got WhatsApp, and previewed that it was good. Prince recalled later speaking with Stone, who told him that WikiLeaks would release more materials harmful to the Clinton campaign. Prince also described Stone having the equivalent of insider stock trading information about Assange. Let's bring America down, everybody. Erik Prince, one project, alternately named Blackjack and Jack Black, was intended to improve the online reputation of American businessman and co-founder of the Blackwater private security services firm Erik Prince. Presumably in response to a request from Prince, Zamel indicated, that's Zamel from the Israeli guy who was head of Psy Group, Zamel indicated that a contract for work never materialised. Zamel said that he was introduced to Erik Prince in 2016 by former CIA official Kofa Black. According to Zamel, several follow-on meetings with Prince occurred at which Zamel and Prince discussed human rights work related to the Middle East. Human rights work. Okay. These are extracts of the Mueller report I made myself. Dugan met with Steve Bannon in Rome in 2018. Bannon's a bit of a quandary, not sure what's going on. He then attacked Kissinger and he attacked Rothschild. He attacked everyone. Then he got arrested and he shut up. Now he just does coke on Moscow's yacht. I don't know. Trying to work it out. It's rather difficult, isn't it? The GRU, let's ignore that bit. That's not that important. WikiLeaks has passed information to US adversaries, including approximately 90,000 US State Department cables to a Russian national named Israel Shamir. He was actually an Israeli-Palestinian Jew, Israeli citizen who renounced his Israeli citizenship and speaks out heavily against Israel. Amazingly, they accused Julian Assange of anti-Semitism because of who he hangs around with, and yet Julian Assange was released very little. He's released a few tidbits on Israel, but not a lot. For such an anti-Semite, I remember there was a quote, an article where Assange and Snowden released a joint statement where they said, due to sensitivities to Jewish communities around the world, it wouldn't release the information on Israel. Funny that. Israel's always protected, like when the British got hold of all those KGB archives and only 3% of the directly related to Israel and KGB GRU penetration has ever been released. Interesting. Julian Assange has said that he focuses his efforts on the United States because it is the world's superpower, but not Israel. I haven't heard a peep. Remember the cyber technology juggernaut Israel? A former colleague of Assange has described his work as a one-dimensional confrontation with the USA, and emails, blah, 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 drafted by Assange reflect his ambition to, quote, bring down the United States with leaks. Yes, Snowden appears to have had the same idea. They got a lot of support. The Russian government has pursued a relationship with Julian Assange and WikiLeaks. The Russian government has had a relationship with Julian Assange since the early 90s when their contact between Assange and Pengo, an East German who worked with the Stasi. And he ended up dead with his throat cut, burnt to death in an East German forest. He was passing on materials to Russian GRU. Remember when Assange was just playing around and hacking DOD and the Pentagon with his friends? We're just hacking, having fun, NASA. The whole time they had KGB affiliations, the whole time. The Russian government has pursued a relationship with Julian Assange and WikiLeaks that includes formal partnerships with state-owned media platforms, government assistance for WikiLeaks associates and sources, and information sharing. This relationship has existed since at least 2012 and reflects an alignment between the Russian government and WikiLeaks in seeking to undermine US institutions and security. Another way to look at it is Vladimir Putin has the entire treasure chest and all the dirt on Israel, and he's exploiting it. That would make sense, except for the fact that they've had a long, long relationship with Israel for a long time. RT, formerly Russia Today, has provided both beneficial coverage of WikiLeaks and a formal compensated media platform for Assange. RT first signed a contract with Assange. Okay, that was the end of that bit. And we go on. This is idiot George Papadopoulos, who gave the game away to our, if you're old enough to remember, Alexander Downing, our foreign minister and brief Prime Minister of Australia, now a ambassador or something, staff to Great Britain, London. And Papadopoulos was blabbing to him. We used to call him Dancing Clown Downer, an absolute talk. You definitely pulled his undies up his backside at school. Anyway, on April 5th, 2016, Farah sent an email message to Papadopoulos in which he wrote, "Let's think about how to engage your Arab and Mideast contacts either in London or in DC." Papadopoulos replied from Tel Aviv, Israel. Papadopoulos replied from Tel Aviv, Israel. And the Mueller report actually asked, why do you always go to Israel, you people? And of course, the Russians, as I mentioned during our meeting. Interesting. It's got some good stuff, particularly meeting in London. They all like meeting in London. You can speak freely in London, they say, or words to that effect. The US and Russia must work to counter Chinese expansionism in Asia and the Middle East. Therefore, a policy of isolating Russia is not sustainable. That's horseshit. That's just an excuse to keep arming and expanding Russia and keep the technology transfer between it and Israel going. I was recently hosted by the Israeli government. This is Papadopoulos again sending an email. I was recently hosted by the Israeli government after I delivered a talk at an energy and security conference there. They are ready to host Mr. Trump when the time is right for him, and I've also invited him to a big conference the largest newspaper there is hosting in July that Netanyahu will also be speaking at. The Russian government has an open invitation by Putin for Mr. Trump to meet him when he is ready as well. The advantage of being in London, are you ready? The advantage of being in London is that these governments tend to speak a bit more openly in neutral cities. Do you want to read that again? This is talking about Russia and Israel and Trump meeting. The advantage of being in London is that these governments tend to speak a bit more openly in neutral banking cartel head cities. City of London, Canary Wharf. It's a parasitic attachment to the UK. It's not the Brits. It is infiltration and subversion as surely as they infiltrated the Vatican. On September 9, 2016, Papadopoulos asked Lanza what he thought about a request from Interfax Russian news agency with Kniza Baragova on US-Russia ties under President Trump. If the campaign wants me to do it, can answer similar to the questions I gave in April while in Israel. The next day, Lanza told Papadopoulos, quote, "You should do it. The Russia-US-Syria agreement is a good example of why we want a partnership with Russia." Page's invitation to Russia was proffered by the rector of the NES, Shlomo Weber. Who is Shlomo Weber? Weber was a native of the Soviet Union who left in the 1970s to emigrate to Israel. Sounds like, I don't know, Amitai Etzioni, a.k.a. Warner Falk, founder of the communitarian movement, Israeli military intelligence, asked Nikki Rapana what it was like when she outed him. Now at George Washington University, educating the world on communitarian law. Losing his Soviet citizenship in the early 1990s, he immigrated to the United States and had a career as an academic for over 2 decades. Sounds like Henry Kissinger. Upon his retirement from his academic position in the United States in the 2010s, he became a guest lecturer at Moscow's NES and eventually became the rector of the school, a position he held until 2018. How interesting. Immediately before the speech, some members of the campaign, including Trump, Kushner and possibly Sessions, briefly met the Russian ambassador Sergei Kislyak, along with other select VIPs in a corner of the room where the speech was given. The committee examined whether anything related to this event raised counterintelligence questions. I don't think Kissinger gets a mention. We'll have to Control F. Kislyak also spoke to Kushner and expressed to him Russia's interest in Trump's position on improved bilateral relations if Trump were elected. And I have to admit, once Trump was got in, he caned the living crap out of Russia. They didn't have it all their own way. The committee found no evidence that this trip occurred, but Bettina and Eriksson met. Now, Bettina is the woman who was jailed for infiltrating the NRA, all friends of Erik Prince, I might add. Bettina and Eriksson met in Israel. It's all Israel. But you never really heard that, did you, on the Mueller report? Alex Jones didn't tell you about that. In early 2014, when they first became romantically involved, when is a Mossad hot assassin gonna fucking come after me? Come on, I've been waiting for decades. Over time, Eriksson became integral to Bettina's activities and assisted her in developing relationships with individuals and organizations involved in US politics. And again, Israel was the opening the doors. They opened the doors for the CCP and they're opening the doors for Russia. In a letter to the committee, Keane wrote that Torshin told him Bolton's speech was very well received and that Bolton received a standing ovation from the Russian Senate on its completion. Good old John Bolton. How interesting. Bettina, that's the female femme fatale infiltrating the NRA, recalled sending an email to Keane to propose that members of the NRA's Golden Ring of Freedom, spend time in Moscow as part of a scheduled NRA trip to Israel. And then she was down at the National Prayer Breakfasts, hanging out. Many of these very high-level special events were granted to us because the Russian figures were going to meet the head of the most powerful political organization in America. AIPAC? How interesting. Wiley alleged that Cambridge Analytica engaged in the procuring of hacked material for the benefit of its clients, the use of specialised technologies and intel gathering services from former members of Israeli and Russian state security services, because they are one, and the management of information operations on behalf of pro-Russian parties in Eastern Europe and the Baltics. A bit worried about the Baltics lately, aren't they? According to Wiley, in 2014, Steve Bannon approved proceeding with Cambridge Analytica-sponsored focus groups concerning Vladimir Putin and Russian expansionism, preparatory to the development of a predictive response model. Wiley also indicated that Mr. Bannon had Konstantin Kulmanik, a Ukrainian political operative with established ties to a Russian intelligence service and a protracted working relationship with Paul Mannafort, were 2 of 3 individuals likely responsible for this idea. Wiley added that of the 200 predicted response models Cambridge Analytica was developing in the United States, Vladimir Putin was the only world leader addressed, and Russian expansionism was the only foreign topic contemplated. It's that whole crew, the pedophile, Ali Akbar, all the whole January 6th, Nick Fuentes, Alex Jones, Dr. Steve Pachenik, involved with Kissinger, walking down to Tucker Carlson and Rupert Murdoch, Erik Prince, Paul Mannafort, Roger Stone, 3EDC, General Jim Jones, Denology. But where's the Israeli angle, Psy Group and all the rest? Military intelligence, Telpiot program, Unit 8200. It's going to come out. It will come out. Kaiser, which is the female that was giving a lot of stuff to do with Cambridge Analytica, told the committee that while Patton ran the Nigeria-based campaign, Cambridge Analytica may have assisted the client retain former Israeli Mossad agents working in a private capacity to conduct opposition research against the client's political opponent. That's James O'Keefe, Erik Prince. How are they getting such access? COVID's been a boon, hasn't it? It's made Alex Jones rich, David Icke, all that crowd. Given us plenty of meat. James O'Keefe said, look over here, we're exposing COVID. It's been a bit of a boon, hasn't it? Psy Group, which was in bankruptcy proceedings in Israel as of December 2018, was an intelligence company specialising in social media manipulation and online reputation and perception management, in other words, IRA operations. Maybe Millie Weaver and Gavin Wince and Shadowgate will do some work on that. I spoke to people that know them personally. They were going into UFO, horseshit, time travel and all sorts of crap with him. And he said he was pretty sure they were going to lose their kids and they were working for someone. Who's that Tor? Tor used to work for Brendon for 10 years. That Tor, the nutcase cat lady. She's not a cat diva. She's a cat lady crap she pushes. And they were hanging around with Rudy Giuliani. Let's get that picture up, shall we? That should tie everything in beautifully. Here's Team America, ladies and gentlemen. There they are. Tor, Gavin Wince, Millie Weaver, and Rudy Giuliani. The man who facilitated the 9/11 whole thing. Ousted the wonderful and gentlemanly Sicilian mafia who allowed you to take your wedding ring and post it to your wife before they blew your brains out. At least there were rules in the old Sicilian mafia. And in came the Israeli-Russian mafia. Good old Rudy Giuliani, a traitor to America who must not die peacefully in his bed. And look who's hanging around him. No mention of Psy Group, no mention of Israel, Unit 8200 and Telpiot program. We're going to have to rethink a lot of things, my friends. Rethink a lot of things. All ties in together. Erik Prince, Rudy Giuliani, Alex Jones, Ali Akbar, the Nick Fuentes who's on Telegram posting overt Nazi stuff. The mainstream media never go after him. All the other players you've seen, Mannafort, Ukraine, Roger Stone, 3EDC, General Jim Jones, and even good old who else, Robert David Steele. And George Webb, the bullshit artist. Don't send me links to George Webb, that bullshit artist, please. And who was defending Whitney Webb. Let's put her in there. And Joe Rogan. You're beginning to see all the pro-Russia crowd? The Last American Vagabond, you're going to work it out? It's worthy of a video, I'd say, wouldn't you think? Watch Rats in the Ranks. Whoops, what did I do? Yeah, you'll have to excuse me, I'm having a bit of Stream Deck problems. Psy Group representatives engaged with Trump campaign senior officials for 2016 for a contract to perform work on behalf of the campaign. These engagements, which included multiple proposals and presentations, purportedly never materialised into any campaign work. Must get this off to Jason Funes, and I will put his interview up. Jason has done an excellent job. True Trump fan, but he's getting a lot of information into that important demographic. A lot of those people want change. We've got to inform them. My biggest mistake is I want to destroy them, and that's wrong. We've got to get in there and take it over. Psy Group was founded in Israel on December 22nd, 2014 as a private intelligence firm specializing in collection and analysis of information, as well as online reputation management and targeted influence. James O'Keefe will know all about this. Erik Prince, Psy Group. Joel Zamel, an Australian living in Israel, and there's a heavy Israeli presence in Israel, particularly Western Australia. We'll go into that later, and we can ask ourselves why they never had a problem with COVID in Western Australia. An Australian living in Israel told the committee that he founded Psy Group with Daniel Green and Elad Schaefer, Zamel Schaefer. He's not a German Jew living in Israel, is he? Because there were a lot of German accented people running around on January the 6th and in Charlottesville. And I might add, remember Muhammad Atta spent 4 years in Hamburg before traveling around America for a year or so with his 3 German friends doing coke and going to strip clubs. Zamel indicated that Psy Group comprised 2 entities, a parent company named IOCO Limited in Cyprus, good old Cyprus, and a subsidiary company based in Israel named Imvop Limited. Cyprus, of course, isn't that where Jolo is hanging out? Good old Jolo and the 1MDB scandal in Malaysia, where Chinese intelligence compromised the entire political and business class of Malaysia. Straits of Malacca, a vitally important spot. According to Zamel, he was a majority shareholder in Psy Group, while Green and Schaefer were minority shareholders. Zamel said IOCO was responsible for business development, contracting and marketing, while the Israeli-based Invop, where the majority of Psy Group employees were located, performed in an operational capacity. How long have we been going? 1 hour, 5 minutes. Let's wind this up. Roy Burstein, an Israeli citizen, was the chief executive officer at Psy Group. Again, if we had a big group of people, we'd be researching who is Roy Burstein, an Israeli citizen. Come on, people, help me out here. Was the chief executive officer at Psy Group. Burstein had left the Israeli military in 2014 and established I2A Intelligence Influence Analysis, a private online influence and intelligence company that operated from approximately March to October 2014. Come on, Millie Weaver, Gavin Wentz, let's have Shadow go through. Burstein was introduced to Zamel in 2014 by a mutual acquaintance, Atay Yonat. Zamel established Invop later that year and hired Burstein as chief executive officer. Zamel described Burstein's background as including working in the intelligence field, conducting influence operations. The precise nature of Burstein's work in the intelligence field. When asked about Psy Group's activities, so James O'Keefe, as we've said, he's a one-hit wonder. He has only one job. When asked about Psy Group's services, Zamel testified that the company had very clear boundaries. We don't do hacking. We don't break the law. Of course you don't, sweetheart. Another set of Psy Group promotional materials advertised the company's influence campaign capability and a suite of attendant services that include online reputation management, offline campaigns, online campaigns, honey traps, hey James O'Keefe, Erik Prince, and dedicated activities. Isn't that right, Alex Jones? That's how they got you. Is it true? Bergie says you were dancing around in a clown shoot inappropriately with children, and Roger Stone has the video, and so does Psy Group. How interesting. In relation to employing individual... And what about Ali Akbar? I presume they got a bit of him and Carl Rove. Have they in bed? Or out in a dark alley somewhere near a rubbish bin? That'd be where those 2 rats would be, wouldn't they? How interesting. In relation to employing individualized avatars, fake accounts, influence operations, and amplification of messaging through automated social media accounts. Zamel asserted to the committee that Psy Group had the ability to conduct those activities, but, quote, didn't do anything like that in the US or in the 2016 elections. In relation to honey traps, Zamel explained that this entailed building a platform, a website or online forum to encourage discussion about certain topics, to obtain information about a target saying certain things or having a certain agenda, to capture some information, maybe conducting an avatar operation on that platform that's controlled by the company. I want you to think about all the ladies, like what's her name, Bieber or whatever her name is, all these little hotties that are going over there, and that includes Millie Weaver. Not directly, but hanging over there in Hollywood with the gals, little modelling agency, but those ones that were over there in the Israeli porn site, Psy Group. These guys came out of, now listen, and we're going to wind this up. These guys came out of the Military Intelligence Army Unit, and it's like coming out with a triple PhD. He's not talking Unit 8200, he's talking the Telpiot program from MIT. The amount of knowledge these guys have in terms of cybersecurity, cyber intelligence, they come out of a unit in which their minds in terms of understanding cybersecurity, the algorithms that they can create is just so beyond what you could get with a normal education that it's just unique. There are hundreds and hundreds of Israeli startup companies that the founders are guys who came out of this unit. That's the Telpiot program, not Unit 8200, but they're both in there. Go and watch my must-watch playlist for all the information on that. Erik Prince. Okay. Let's now wind this up. Woo, I'm tired. I'm exhausted. So we've had a quick look at the Ukraine on the one side of the war. They're smashing the place up. They're going to introduce central bank digital currencies, electronic digital ledger system, and build the smart cities there. Is that Vlad's job, just to smash it up and then move on? I don't know, but that was the most bizarre military campaign in history. The Russians are not, of course, anywhere near on par with the American military. However, they're not entirely stupid, and yet they conducted themselves like freaking idiots. They must have known. We could talk for hours about it. Let's move on. That's the Ukraine then. Now we're getting back to good old Erik Prince, Paul Mannafort, Roger Stone, WikiLeaks, Julian Assange, Edward Snowden, Ali Akbar, Steve Bannon, Alex Jones, Dr. Steve Pachenik, Dr. Henry Kissinger. Hello? Psy Group, Israel United 200, Israeli operations. Jeffrey Epstein, compromising of CEOs, transferring of so much technology and Intel and Microsoft to Israel, and they seem to badly want to build up Russia. Why is that? So many questions. And Whitney Webb, George Webb, hanging out with Robert David Steele. Robert David Steele hanging out with Roger Stone. Watch Rats in the Ranks. Think about this network of limited hangouts, all protecting Russia, all protecting Russia and protecting Israel. And when we pushed it out there, they toss a little bone. They toss a little bone. They toss a little bone. Was that the dog whistle from Trump? Ugh, when he went after Netanyahu, just another dog whistle? These are the questions we have to ask. You are so infiltrated, America. We just gave you one posse of rats that need arresting. They aren't your friends. COVID has made them heroes now. Was that what COVID was about? I mean, I'm sure there's 5 or 6 different things it was about. But it was like this big meaty bone. Were we looking somewhere else? Did we have to look somewhere else? Was this a warning to back off Israel and Russia and the whole Telpiot program, Unit 8200, and the infiltration? Microsoft being in Israel. That's why they threw COVID out there in act of desperation. Get all those dogs off us. Put a big meaty bone over there. Let's get everyone looking over there. And we'll bring America down at the same time. I don't know. These are narratives to investigate. I often find when I go through this, I have more questions than I have answers. What can I tell you? Anyway, I hope this gets you out there. You've got Nathaniel Rothschild hanging with these people, these private intelligence networks, Erik Prince in the East India Trading Company model, the privatization of everything. We must stop this privatization. We must get it back into the hands of transparent government where there are paper trails and you can watch and you are a member of the board. We've got to stop this libertarian bullshit where the Koch brothers want to remove the government, the horrible government. What? So private transnational banking cartels can take over? They are not all powerful. If they were all powerful, they would have had this sewn up in 1939. And they still don't. It's still a freaking disaster and they're still struggling and they're desperate and they're dangerous. We keep fighting. We're going to get those materials ready for you over the coming weeks. We've got graphics designer, going to get onto it. We're moving as fast as we can. Julianne Romanello, that interview will be coming up soon to go on YouTube, and this will follow in a week or so. All my videos are available a week before. Ladies and gentlemen, as we head into the age of destabilised perception, what would Greta say?
How dare you?
Exactly. How dare they? I am tired of these people and I'm tired of the distraction. I pray something comes out of the January the 6th Senate hearing committees. I want to see Alex Jones in jail. I want to see them all in jail. But we can't, Brendon. We can't. They've exposed COVID. Yeah, it's made a lot of heroes and a lot of villains, hasn't it? No one ever goes to jail, though. Fauci's not in jail. Gates out. That's still fine, apparently, for now. Something going on, don't you think? It's very complicated, but we will work it all out. But we found a lot of rats. And when you're hanging out with Rudy Giuliani people, you're a rat. And you're going to pay for that. Ladies and gentlemen, you are infiltrated America. Let's keep America strong. Ironically, keep their military-industrial complex strong. And I put to you, as we sum this up, you're filled with rats of every kind. Erik Prince is one of them. This is not about right-wing. It's not about left-wing. It's about securing America, its borders, its constitutions, and its constitutional government. And if this outsider, this guy from down under has to have a go, I'll have a go. I know what it's like to be tossed in jail and have your bones broken. I know what it's like to be shut up. I know what censorship is. I know what it's like to be gagged. I know what it's like to go through so much hell, your entire immune system and your hormone and your pituitary gland and your thyroid shut down. You're so exhausted. I know exactly what it's like. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get organised. Let's lobby politically. We keep America strong, keep it as the world power, keep the US dollar strong, linked with the petrodollar, and keep the United States right there in the middle of the Pan-Eurasian superstate. They can bring down this system. Only America can do this. I'll leave you with the great Bill Cooper. I will leave you with the great F. Scott Fitzgerald. Keep your chin up. Yes, it's all hopeless, but we're going to win anyway. Catch you later. F. Scott Fitzgerald, quote, "The test of a first-rate intelligence is the ability to hold two opposing ideas in the mind at the same time and still retain the ability to function. One should, for example, be able to see that things are hopeless and yet be determined to make them otherwise. This philosophy fitted on to my early adult life when I saw the improbable, the implausible, often the impossible, come true."
What is our common bond truly? Freedom. Freedom. Without freedom, you can't be a Christian no matter what denomination you belong to. You can't be a Buddhist. You can't own a donut shop. You can't drive from here to Oregon. You can't be an American because that's what it's all about, and that's the only thing that it's all about. Nothing else. Nothing else. It's about freedom. Only freedom.